Hello, good morning, and it is Thursday. I think we're probably about 5 minutes late, and apologies, but I was on another call. So good morning, welcome to Weekly Bite session. For those of you who haven't been on this before, I'm doing this every Thursday morning at 9:30, and the idea is that I can help you answer any questions that you may have that you might not even realize that you had actually. Sometimes it could be just about finding out more information that you didn't even realize you were aware of before. So the idea is I'm going to come on here every week and answer some questions for you and raise some points that I've seen coming up in the club. So good morning, Jamie, welcome. So, you know, while people are coming on board, I just want to make sure that you know that I am here in the background and I'm working every day on each and every one of your files with the most amazing team behind me, thank goodness. So it's not because I'm not emailing you that your file is not getting organised. Jenny, Antonella and Annalise are all here working on your files. So I'm going to get started this morning. What I wanted to look at in the Weekly Bite session was to look at the Auto Entrepreneur. Last week we looked at Auto Entrepreneur social charges, and if you haven't seen that, do go down into the Facebook page and you'll see all the previous Thursday Facebook Lives. We did healthcare, we did mutuals, and now last week we did social charges. And this week I wanted to look at earnings limits for auto entrepreneurs and costs and next steps, because it's something that comes across in question format quite often, but also there's a misunderstanding around about the auto entrepreneur earnings. So I wanted to make sure that you all know and understand it. And if you don't, please let me know. If you come on live, let me know that you're here. And if you've got any questions, pop them in the message and I will answer them while I'm on today. And if you have any questions concerning anything to do with your files, let me know and I will cover it either on a Facebook Live or in another forum. So, earnings limits for auto entrepreneurs. Now, as you know, the earnings limits went up in 2018. So if you have a service-based auto entrepreneur business, the earnings limit went up to €70,000. So that would be anything to do with manual activities or consultancy activities. You would have the earnings limits as an auto entrepreneur of €70,000. If you have a sales business, as in you are buying and reselling products, then it would be 170,000. However, what did not change was the VAT limits, and this is something that's important. Is that although you can earn as a commercial entrepreneur, so for example, you are a manual activity. Jamie, I know you have a manual activity, you can go up to €70,000. You can only actually go up to 32,600 for VAT. It gets pushed to 35,000. So if you earn between 32 and 35,000, by the second year, you would have to charge VAT. So my advice is to, if you don't want to be VAT registered, to keep it under the 32,000 limit. And for, of course, if you have a sales activity where you're at higher earnings levels, the VAT limit is 91,000. Well, 82,600 up to 91,000. And again, VAT is 20% for the majority of services. So it would mean if you had to be VAT registered, that all of your invoicing, you would have to add on VAT of 20%. And that means you could also recuperate some of the VAT costs of any products that you buy. The complexity, of course, that VAT adds means you would have to do a VAT declaration at least once a year, and you would have to keep a very close eye on your VAT, well, your tickets, if you like, your receipts. So it does add a bit of complexity, and let's face it, the whole point of the auto entrepreneur system was to keep it simple. That's why it's called a simplified system, where you have no VAT, you don't need an accountant, and you don't have to worry about doing VAT declarations. So when President Macron brought in these new auto entrepreneur earnings limits, doubled them, everybody jumped with joy. and everybody thought it was wonderful, and so went out there and started earning more money. Well, that's great, but some people forgot to add in the VAT. And bear in mind that if you go over the VAT limit, they have the right to come back and ask you for that 20%. So if you have not done a planned VAT update, then they can come back and ask for that 20%, which can be quite painful if you haven't charged your customer that 20%. So, Gavin, this is something you should think about as well, because I know you're going that way. So you need to start adding VAT to your invoices, and then ideally what happens then is you let the tax office know that you need a VAT number. They will send you a VAT number that goes on every invoice. And then each year a declaration has to be made to the tax office of VAT. And of course, I can help you with this. So if this is somewhere you go in, let me know in advance so I can help you get ready for it. One thing I think about this is, although if you think you're going to go to the VAT limits, one thing that you might consider is changing the business regime, because of course it adds more complexity. So why not take some benefits by changing your business regime and going into the real system? Because in the real system, not only would you charge VAT, but you could recuperate your costs. And let's face it, costs are a big problem in the auto-entrepreneur system. Depending what activity you have, you may have high costs and you can't recoup anything as an auto-entrepreneur. So what I say for auto-entrepreneurs is make sure you keep, hi Michaela, make sure you keep all of your costs. So even if you're an auto-entrepreneur, make sure that you keep a track of your costs. Make sure that anything that's going into your business account from your customers is your invoicing goes into your business account, which is an account used for your business, and that any costs come out of that account as well, which makes it much easier to be able to track what limits you have and how much percentage your costs are of your business. If you find that the costs of your business are over 40%, certainly for a marketing type business, then you want to be thinking of changing your business regime. So it's a good way of keeping track of those costs, just to see where you are with your cost structure compared to your turnover. And if you are going to a higher earnings limit where you're going to be VAT registered at this stage, I highly recommend then changing your system. The only complexity of that is, of course, that you would then need an accountant. So there is cost attached to that. Bear in mind as well for the cost aspects of an auto-entrepreneur. I know it's sometimes quite painful because we're paying all of this and we can't get anything back. But in fact, you get a really big tax break. Auto-entrepreneurs, for example, if you're in a service-based auto-entrepreneur, so commercial services, or even an artisan activity manual, you get 50% off tax. So for everything that you invoice, 50% will be taken off for tax. So if you have a turnover of 30,000 euros, which is, let's face it, the limit of the auto-entrepreneur without VAT, you're going to only be taxed on 15,000. So that's a big, big tax break. And they do that simply because they know you have costs. They know you have social charges. And that's why they give you the tax break. If your costs get higher than that 50%, then yes, change out of the auto-entrepreneur system into the real system. And of course, bear in mind that then you would take off all your costs of your business before tax. So all the costs come off the business and you pay your tax on your net profit. So if you understand the system correctly, what that means is the higher your costs are, the better it is for you. Because the lower your net profit is, the less income tax you will pay and the less social charges you will pay. There are situations where, as an auto-entrepreneur, you would pay less social charges in the real system than being as an auto-entrepreneur. So it's definitely worth tracking those costs, even if it's just in your bank account, so you can see at the end of each year what the percentage costs are to your business. Another reason for changing out of the auto-entrepreneur system would be if, of course, you want to have associates or shareholders, and of course the earnings limit that go a lot higher. So keep a track on that, and if you want to change the business regime, make sure you let me know in advance so I can prepare you for it, because If you go from auto entrepreneur to the real system, that happens each calendar year. It can't happen in the middle of the year. And the reason is because it's a fiscal change. It's not a business legal structure change. It's simply a fiscal change. You're changing from fiscally being in the simplified system to being in the real system. So that happens every calendar year, along with your fiscal situations on a calendar year. So I know that sounds probably a bit complicated, but I think it's easy to get on here and explain the earnings limits and how the costs work in an auto entrepreneur business and what those possible next steps are if you think you're going towards the VAT limits. Because I sincerely think that Mr. President Macron brought in those doubled earnings limits because he wanted people to come out of the auto entrepreneur and go into the real system. And for some people that's appropriate, but for some people it's not. So if you have a worry about this, let me know. Another reason to possibly come out of the auto entrepreneur system would be to protect your assets, your personal assets, because of course, as an auto entrepreneur, you are a sole trader, everything is in your name, and therefore you are personally liable. So sometimes people want to get a little bit of extra protection, in which case even the real system might not be appropriate, and you may want to set up a SAS or a SAL. But for now, we're going a bit bigger business, so I'm not going to fill your head with other questions on which other business structure you should have. For the moment, the objective today is really that you understand that the earnings limits for auto entrepreneur are 70,000 for sales, for services and manual activities, and 170 for sales of products, buying and selling of products, but that the VAT limits are not that high. The VAT limits are at 32k for services and at 90k maximum for selling of products. So if you think you're going towards those earnings limits, let's make sure we have a chat. And in the meantime, even if you're nowhere near those limits, make a point of keeping a track of those costs. And what costs can you keep a track of? Anything to do with transport, anything to do with food and restaurants, if you are obviously on the road and having, meetings with customers, anything to do with buying of products to deliver the service that you do, anything to do with internet, so your telephone, because you need the telephone to call the customers, your laptop, for of course, if you have to buy a laptop to be able to manage your customers' emails and such like. So there's lots of things like that that go through the business. Flyers, marketing materials, internet access, all those things that you might not think about are actually cost to your business. If you have a room that you use in your house for your business, that's a cost to your business. And if you are an auto entrepreneur, those costs, you need to be able to quantify them, even though you can't reduce them from your business, because that is what will help you decide whether you should be in the real system. Other costs that you may have could be, if you have a very manual. I know, Jamie, you probably have to buy tools, maybe. Certainly, electricians. I know your husband, Michaela, is an electrician, so tools and things like that. They're all part of costs that would go through a business. The difficulty is if you have an activity which is more of a consulting activity, because there's not a huge amount of cost. But you would be surprised, actually, when you dig down deep, how many costs go through a business. If you are a sole trader business, whether that be auto entrepreneur or the real system, the accountant will not take into account all of your costs, because he knows that, for example, your car you may be using on the weekday for your clients, but on the weekends for yourself. So generally speaking, most accountants take 5/7 of the costs. Your auto, your tolls and things like that, you get a badge and put that through your business. But of course, only 5/7 would be taken out of the business. So if you hire a car, for example, maybe you want to hire a car, a long-term hire purchase, that could be a cost to your business. So I think that's it. I think I've filled your head enough with things that you can keep a track of on costs, just to see if you're in the right system. And if you have any doubts whatsoever, then let me know, okay? So, and that was the reasons why you made change as well. If those costs are too high, if your earnings levels are going too high, if you want to bring in associates, or if you find that you want to protect more of your personal assets away from the business. Okay. Last thing before I leave you on bank accounts. So for Auto Entrepreneur bank accounts, you don't have to have a business account. It just needs to be an account that is used for business purposes. Okay. And for new auto entrepreneurs in 2019, you have 1 year to be able to do that. So it's not something that is urgent. You can still use your normal account whilst getting your business set up. Okay, that's it from me today. I think I've blabbered on enough for you. I hope you've got some more clarity about the business costs and the auto entrepreneur and the VAT limits. It's a very important thing to get across to you. And if there's anything that has triggered in your mind due to this, then please leave me a message and we will discuss it in next week's weekly bites next Thursday at 9:30. I'll be back online. If you've got any questions, come along with your questions and I can hot seat you. Okay, so that's it from me. Have a great day. Have a great Friday tomorrow and a wonderful weekend. And I will see you next week. Bye.